The Jacqueline Kennedy White House Restoration by Dale Corneli. Jacqueline Lee Bouvier Kennedy Onassis was most known for her trend-setting fashion, movie star good looks, or high-profile marriages to President John F. Kennedy and shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis. While she's not just a pretty face, Jacqueline Kennedy accomplished many great things in her life, from raising successful children to becoming a publisher. But the most famous of all her accomplishments was her White House restoration. By restoring the White House to its full potential, Jacqueline Kennedy preserved the magnificent history of the executive branch. Jacqueline Kennedy did not want to simply redecorate her new home at the White House. She wanted to restore it. She thought that the White House should be a historical mecca, full of objects of the past. In the book, Jacqueline Kennedy, The White House Years, written by Hamish Bowles, Arthur M. Schlesinger, and Rachel Lambert Mellon, Jacqueline Kennedy stated in her own words, "It would be sacrilege to merely redecorate it. It must be restored, and that it has nothing to do with decoration. That is a question of scholarship." Mrs. Kennedy obviously wanted her new home to be as historically accurate as possible. Blair Whitcomb, who wrote Real Life at the White House, 200 Years of Daily Life at America's Most Famous Residence, was interviewed by the website Mom Logic and was quoted in the article Secrets of the White House to have said, "Jackie Kennedy cried when she saw how run down the White House was when she arrived." To accomplish her goals, Mrs. Kennedy formed numerous committees and historical associations. One in particular was the White House Historical Association, which was formed by Mrs. Kennedy in November of 1961 in order to research and gather historically significant period pieces of furniture and art. The first time Jacqueline visited the White House was when she was a child, and she remembered being saddened by the lack of historical reference within the walls of the presidential palace. So when she visited it for the second time in her life, she wanted to make sure it was both pleasing to her personal tastes, but also allowed visitors to learn the significance this American symbol contained. According to the article, American President Jacqueline Kennedy, written by the Miller Center of Public Affairs at the University of Virginia, it was said that before President-elect Kennedy was inaugurated in January 1961, that Jackie was given a tour of her soon-to-be new home, courtesy of Mamie Eisenhower. When it was time for her to leave, Chief White House usher J.B. West said that she's planning to redo every room in this house, and she did just that. After she finally moved into the Maison Blanche, as she referred to it, Jacqueline Kennedy began her extensive quest for restoring the White House by collaborating with members of her committees and discovering antique furniture. Jacqueline Kennedy gathered either the original or replicas of antique period pieces that had belonged to past presidents with the help of organizations, private citizens, and government insiders. Jackie often organized spelunking adventures into White House storerooms and warehouses in order to find forgotten treasures of the past administrations. One period of time, Jacqueline and her restoration team, which included Henry Francis DuPont, owner and expert of all things Americana, and the French interior designer Stéphane Boudon, focused on was the Monroe administration. Documented in the book Designing Camelot, The Kennedy White House Restoration by James A. Abbott and Elaine M. Rice, one instant occurred when the team rediscovered a Monroe-era pier table by Pierre-Antoine Boulange in the basement of the White House. Mrs. Kennedy would often use art experts to promote her project and often used her charm into convincing private collectors into donating their pieces of historical furniture to the White House. On two separate occasions, Jacqueline was presented with extraordinary gifts that would both greatly enhance not only the appearance of the White House, but the historical aspects as well. These objects were a large desk made from the timbers of the British sailing ship, the HMS Resolute, which was given to the past President Rutherford B. Hayes from the Queen Victoria in 1878, and a 200-year-old mahogany high chair for her son John, which was given by Bill Green of Fairfax, Virginia. In the televised tour of the completely finished White House, Mrs. Kennedy points out other significant finds, such as early 19th century pottery and the wallpaper put up in the diplomatic reception room that depicted classic scenes of America. Her White House tour exhibited the final product of the project she and her collaborators had worked on for a year's time. It seems the entire nation was anxious to see what the new White House looked like. Almost half of the population watched in anticipation on its broadcast in 1962. The White House restoration sparked national interest in historical preservation and the importance of the arts. Professor Michael Curtin of the University of Wisconsin-Madison has said that a tour of the White House with Mrs. John F. Kennedy was the first primetime documentary to explicitly court a female audience. Around 80 million viewers tuned in on February 14, 1962, to watch Jackie's one-hour tour of the newly restored Executive Mansion. Because of the time and effort that she and her staff put into making the White House such a remarkable place, Jacqueline initiated a congressional bill that would establish that anything bought by the White House during one administration would become property of the Smithsonian Institute if the new residents of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue did not want it. To praise her accomplishments in both the television program and the restoration, the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences awarded her an honorary Emmy. Within the walls of her newly updated home, Jacqueline and her husband hosted many elegant dinners, spectacular music and theater performances, and generally incorporated aspects of the arts into these gatherings. Through these grand parties, America was shown how important music, visual art, and theater was in shaping the culture of not only the past, but the decade in which the Kennedys lived, the 1960s. And because of Jackie's love and support of the arts, Lyndon Baines Johnson, her husband's successor, established, with her help, the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment of Humanities. As one can see, Jacqueline Kennedy's dream of restoring her home of 3 years benefited the country as a whole. Because she demanded that the White House be treated as a museum, the nation gained one of its most distinguishing features. She had shown her fellow Americans that it was okay to be intellectually inclined and strive for knowledge of their country's political and artistic history. By restoring the White House, Jacqueline Kennedy paved the way for future First Ladies and government officials to preserve the magnificent history of the executive branch.